Right now on the Daily Debrief, a verdict in the case of a Florida crime scene investigator accused of shooting and killing a former police officer.
Ashley MacArthur murdered Taylor Wright.
The state says it's premeditated. The defense says she didn't do it.
They cannot just have conjecture here.
The jury's decision, plus the key testimony that led to the result. And a cheerleader accused of murdering her baby. Her family says the child was stillborn. Also, the brother of an Olympic gymnast under arrest on murder charges. The Daily Debrief recaps the day in court. It's Friday, August 30th.
Welcome to the Debrief, everybody. Katherine Smith, Michael Bryant, along with me for analysis today. A verdict after 3 hours of deliberation in the case of a former Florida crime scene investigator accused of murdering a former police officer. Defendant Ashley MacArthur was accused of shooting Taylor Wright in the back of the head and then hiding Wright's remains on property owned by MacArthur's aunt. The state said the motive was money, but the defendant said she didn't do it. Here was the verdict in this circumstantial case.
Verdict as to the charge in count one, we the jury find the defendant Ashley MacArthur guilty of first-degree premeditated murder with a firearm as charged in the indictment. So say we all. David A. Faust, foreperson, dated August 30th, 2019.
The crime carried an automatic life sentence plus 25 years for using the firearm. And earlier today, the state and the defense presented closing arguments. Let's begin with the state.
So in July of 2017, you know that Taylor withdrew $100,000 from a bank account that she wasn't supposed to when she was going through some issues with her ex-husband. 2 months later, ladies and gentlemen, 2 months later, Taylor is gone, vanished, disappeared, dead. And who was she with trying to get her money back? Ashley MacArthur. This defendant was supposed to be holding Taylor's money, not spending it. Taylor needed that money back, and that money was gone. And the day Taylor was with this defendant to get her money back, then Taylor was gone. You have the video surveillance from Tom Thumb. The defendant and Taylor were at the Tom Thumb. You never see Taylor, but by the defendant's own admission, they're together. She buys 2 drinks, 1 beer for Taylor, 1 drink for herself. Then the defendant's cell phone is using a tower that covers the Britt Road farm, not Milton. That is when Taylor Wright is murdered.
The state says MacArthur only admitted she was at the farm the day the crime is believed to have been committed, after detectives confronted her with her cell phone location data. Authorities located the victim's body during a search of that farm.
Taylor Wright shot in the back of the head. Why is that significant? Because Ashley MacArthur was constantly talking about how tough Taylor was, and she always had firearms. She's a prior law enforcement officer. She knows how to protect herself. I don't know if you caught it, but in the audio or in the interview on September 18th, she said, "Taylor is not an easy target." Taylor shot in the back of the head. Got the projectile in her skull that was removed. Ladies and gentlemen, Ashley MacArthur had the motive. Ashley MacArthur had the opportunity. Ashley MacArthur murdered Taylor Wright, and then she tried to cover it up with lies, concrete, and potting soil.
That was a strong way to wrap up, in my opinion. But the defense argued that even though MacArthur may have had the motive and the opportunity, the state, the defense said, did not prove the defendant killed the victim beyond a reasonable doubt.
The state talks about opportunity and motive. I don't think you're going to hear an instruction that says, well, if someone has the opportunity and motive, they must have committed murder. She's jumping the fence and putting on a lot of information about theft. The fact that someone is in that position doesn't mean that they individually caused the death of Miss Wright. The medical examiner, Dr. Minyard, came in and testified that she could not tell you when death occurred. She said that she's seen skeletization happen within 10 days. So nobody scientifically knows when the death occurred. If the state says that's when it occurred, that's based upon what they believe the circumstances prove, but they must prove all circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt. They cannot just have conjecture here.
The defense pointed to a lack of physical evidence when asking the jury to find MacArthur not guilty.
On her back problem, I didn't say Miss MacArthur couldn't kayak or couldn't hunt or anything like that. All we put in there is evidence to show that in 2010, Miss MacArthur had an accident. It was a serious accident, as Dr. Roberts testified. If she was running around, pulling this body, lifting this body, putting 90 pounds of concrete on September the 9th, and moving the body on September the 8th, wouldn't you think you'd see something to indicate that? You know, this case is 2 years old almost. They've had a lot of evidence over the time. They knew the exact brand of that concrete. Why didn't they test it? They didn't test it. It's a big question. The concrete is different on that body, those remains, than the concrete she purchased. There's no DNA. There's no DNA linking Miss MacArthur to Taylor Wright's death. There's no trace or scientific evidence linking her.
During a rebuttal, the state pointed to the defendant's education and employment and suggested the defendant was the type of person who would try to plot a crime and get away with it.
No forensic evidence, Mr. Brossett says, of where and when Taylor was killed. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, the state cannot pinpoint the exact square foot where Ashley put the bullet in the back of Taylor's head. It's 23 acres. She didn't take her out there to go pick up a lockbox. She took her out there to kill her. Can I tell you exactly on that piece of property where it happened? No. But you know it did. And then Ashley wrapped Taylor up in the hammock that was inside the barn, and she dragged her, hauled her, drove her, pulled her, whatever. And it's not even a grave. She didn't dig a hole. She just put her body there and covered it. She's a smart girl. She's got a criminal justice degree. She's not going to bury her right on the property. Her aunt's trying to hold weddings out there. So she puts her just across the property line. How did she get Taylor over there? There are wheelbarrows, riding lawnmowers, ATVs, four-wheelers. She didn't toss Taylor over her shoulder and carry her.
Prosecutors used a series of photos to describe to the jury exactly where the victim's remains were dumped and buried under concrete and soil. Among the images were these pictures of a trailer and the barn you saw there on property owned by the defendant's aunt. The images show a wooded area near the barn. That is where the gruesome discovery was made. Later, prosecutors showed the jury images of the excavation of the victim's remains. Of course, the remaining medical examiner who looked at the remains testified that the victim had been shot from the back of the head. Prosecutors allege that Ashley MacArthur buried the victim's body with potting soil and concrete that she purchased with cash and then saved the receipts. Prosecutors say this video shows the items that the defendant purchased. Police found the receipt, went back to the store, and retrieved surveillance footage of the defendant actually making the purchase. A Home Depot employee testified that the defendant specifically requested the fast-setting concrete you saw there, apparently because she was in a hurry. The defendant also bought the potting mix, cement patcher, and lawn soil.
She was near my apartment in the middle of the store.
Okay. And when you asked her if she needed help, what was she looking at, or what was she doing at that point?
She was looking for, well, she was walking towards the concrete, and I asked her, did she need help? She said yes. And I was asking her what she was using, what she had wanted to get and what she was using it for.
Okay. And what was she looking for?
A fast-setting concrete.
At that point, did she have anything else in her cart?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that?
She had 2 bags of potting soil.
And did you help her with the concrete?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you do?
I loaded it into the cart and then walked her up to self-checkout to check out.
And after she checked out, did you walk her to her Jeep?
Yes, ma'am.
3 guests are with us tonight here for analysis of this case on the debrief. Attorney Eclyenne Mercy is in Atlanta. With me here in New York are attorneys Katherine Smith and Michael Bryant. So, Michael, what do you make of the verdict here? Is this a good verdict in your opinion? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was expected. I think the circumstantial evidence was overwhelming. And really, I think the defense didn't do enough with what they did have to work with. I think they could have done more on the time of death, which certainly could have opened up a window of opportunity for someone else to have done the crime. But yeah, this was kind of the way we thought it would go.
Eclyenne Mercy in Atlanta, Georgia. Did the defense do a good enough job defending this client, in your opinion?
No, they didn't. I think that there were a whole bunch of holes that they could have poked, in the sense that we do not have an innocent victim. So we have a victim with a history of lying. She has a secret life. She was former law enforcement, so people could have been mad at her for that. She was a personal private investigator, so she probably broke up a lot of marriages, and people could have been mad at her for that. She also takes drugs. So she uses cocaine. So she probably owes people money. So people could have been mad at her for that. There are a litany of things that they could have picked holes on, and they didn't. And there were a lot of objections that they could have made, and they didn't. That picture with her holding the gun, albeit harmless error, if they want to argue it, should have been objected on. A motion for a mistrial should have been made at that moment, and they missed that opportunity.
Well, I mean, they did raise the objection. The judge just turned around and said, oh, I don't think it was that big of a deal. So in Eclyenne Mercy's world, question as well here, Eclyenne, do you think that the defense should have done more to try to make the defendant herself look more sympathetic in this matter? Could they have gotten up there and said, hey, look, she took an oath to uphold the law. That's why she was checking in on the case. It wasn't to try to stall things or delay things. I mean, could there have been more have done in that respect as well?
Absolutely, because Taylor Wright was a private investigator. She already knew what type of person Ashley was. You know what I'm saying? She's former law enforcement. She didn't have to. You don't need to really run a whole criminal history. You don't need a degree to run a whole criminal history. So she knew what she was dealing with Ashley. So with that being said, if you know that, and if you know that, hey, Taylor knows what type of friend Ashley is, and then you explore that relationship, it kind of just makes it on an even playing field, in that she could have other people who have problems with her who could have wanted her murdered.
Katherine Smith, what do you make of this issue with the defendant saving the Home Depot receipt that the authorities then got a hold of and used to track back the cash purchase of the potting soil and the concrete? Why hold on to the receipt? And then, what's up with this defense thing in the closings where they say, oh, it was a different type of concrete? That came out of left field, it seemed like.
Yeah, pardon the pun, but it kills me. I mean, why would you commit a murder and then save the receipts? I mean, you could flip that on the other side and say, well, this is more evidence that she didn't commit the murder because, she's CSI, she's smart. She would never have saved the receipts if she really committed this murder.
A lot to talk about still ahead here on the debrief. A look back at the defense case here in the Ashley MacArthur trial and the explosive things the defendant said, which ultimately did not do her any favors. Plus, a look ahead to the trial of an Ohio cheerleader charged with murdering her baby 2 days after her high school prom. That case and more when we return. The criminal prosecution of an Ohio cheerleader accused of murdering her newborn baby begins next week. Prosecutors are accusing Brooke Skylar Richardson of killing her baby 2 days after her own high school prom. Her family, however, says that is not what happened, that it was not murder. They say the baby was stillborn and that Richardson buried it without telling anyone because she was afraid of social backlash. The state, however, believes the baby's death was premeditated. This case and others begin after Labor Day on the Law&Crime Network. The brother of five-time Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles is facing charges in connection to a New Year's Eve shooting that killed 3 people in Ohio. Tevin Biles Thomas has been charged with murder, voluntary manslaughter, felonious assault, and perjury. Investigators say a group of uninvited guests walked into a home when a fight broke out and multiple people were shot. Cleveland police identified Biles Thomas as the shooter. 2 of the victims died on the scene. A third died at the hospital. Admitted killer Gypsy Blanchard is apparently engaged again. The young Missouri woman pleaded guilty to plotting with her boyfriend, Nick Godejohn, to murder her mother after she suffered years of abuse at the hands of her mother. Blanchard reportedly broke off her engagement with another man this week, but that engagement now is reportedly back on. This is all according to In Touch magazine. The fiancé is reportedly a man named Ken. And back now to the trial of Ashley MacArthur, where several acquaintances testified that the defendant said a number of less than pleasant things about the victim. During her police interrogation, the defendant herself even used a few choice words. Here is a quick review.
She told me they'll never find that bitch. She's gone.
That the world would be a better place without Taylor.
What specifically did Ashley say about cocaine?
How much coke do you think it would take to kill somebody?
She's a strange girl. Taylor is a very tough person. She's always come across as being tough and never made it anything other than, she's always carrying weapons, whether it's knives or guns or whatever. She's not an easy target.
Despite all that, the defense called a chiropractor who treated the defendant after a car crash. The argument was that the defendant was too injured to have carried out the alleged crime.
She was having trouble traveling, sitting or standing, lift overhead, lifting objects off the floor, bend, squat. She had difficulty walk or run. She's asked if her income declined, and she said no. Are you taking pain medication? Yes. Do you see more doctors now than before? Yes. Interference with your ability to see the people that are important to you, and yes. Interfere with recreational activities? Yes. Family, friends, interaction? Yes. Do you feel depressed, tense, anxious? Yes. Emotional problems caused by your pain that interfere with your family, social, or work? Yes.
The defendant's own mother agreed with the chiropractor and practically laughed when the defense asked her if she'd seen the defendant carrying anything heavy, like a bag of cement.
She can lift heavy things. It would hurt her back if she did. She'd walk funny and you could tell she was in pain.
Has she, to your knowledge, ever had any surgery since that time?
No, they told her that she'd probably have to have surgery at some point, but they didn't want to do it then because she was young.
And have you ever seen her lift anything like a 50 pounds concrete bag or anything that heavy?
No.
And is that to this day?
Yes.
Another defense witness said he worked several jobs on the property where the victim's body was found at times relevant to this investigation. He said he saw nothing unusual.
So you were left out, as far as you know, you were out there on the farm by yourself?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fair to say you probably were out there, give or take, 2 hours?
Hour, give or take, maybe an hour and a half.
All right. Did you notice to see any blood anywhere?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you see any, like, what appeared to be drag marks where something heavy could have been moved anywhere?
No, sir.
Did you see any indications around the property where it looked like maybe recently concrete had been made or anything like that?
No, sir.
What about any potting soil that was, not in pots, but in a different location, kind of unusual location sitting out anywhere?
No, sir.
Did you notice any unusual odors or smells that caught your attention?
No, sir.
What about the second visit?
No, sir.
First visit, any maggots or anything like that anywhere?
No, sir.
Second visit?
No, sir. Not a buzzard in the sky.
Back to our panel again tonight. Let's begin with attorney Eclyenne Mercy in Atlanta. So Eclyenne, I got to ask about this. What's going on with the chiropractor, the mother saying that this defendant had all of these injuries, but then we had all these pictures pulled off of the phone that showed the defendant horseback riding and boating and hunting and you name it. She's out there engaging in a pretty active lifestyle. The defense tried to deflect that and say, oh, I wasn't saying that it was so bad that she couldn't do any of this stuff. But look, anybody who's ridden a horse, whether it's English dress or Western, knows that it jostles your back all over the place. So what's going on with that? That defense deflection, was that just completely meaningless?
It was terrible. It was actually painful to watch. I think that the defense actually had a defense in which when MacArthur was giving her statement, she was basically doing like a Gone Girl, with regards to Taylor, like saying that, she's a mastermind and she's not, disappeared. She actually went away and we don't know who Taylor actually is. And then you have defense just throwing this haphazard defense about her back. And then for it to just explode in their faces with these pictures. Oh, sweet Jesus, it's so bad that it just disintegrates any part, like any semblance of a defense is gone with these pictures. They should have done better. This was really bad and unfortunate.
We were talking about this on the network and on the debrief yesterday. So, Katherine Smith, what do you make of this? Not only do we have the pictures, but we had the string of words that made it relatively clear, to me at least, that this particular defendant did not like this victim. And those words were damaging and they were biting.
They were terrible, right? And that's the thing, as a defense, you know that this is coming. I think to lead so strongly with all this back evidence when you know that these photographs are out there was just a poorly calculated move. They should have scaled back with that. And all the testimony, Michael Bryant, about the language, calling the victim the B word, saying the world would be a better place without her. She's a strange girl. Oh, how much cocaine does it take to put in somebody's beer to poison somebody? This is the language that was surrounding this relationship between this defendant and this victim. And if I'm a juror, I might look at that and say, hey, look, this isn't just a financial motive. There was hatred. There was animosity here. That's even stronger than a financial motive, perhaps.
You're right. And some might say, if they're from that community in that area, that maybe that's just the way we talk. We give each other a hard time. We're just not, we're not serious, not going to kill anybody. And by the way, I did some Googleization, and I'm still not sure how much cocaine it takes in a beer to kill somebody.
That question hasn't been answered
if it's even
on
possible.
the interwebs
Right.
yet. Okay.
I think ultimately the jury use their common sense. They see the defendant buying the goods ultimately found covering the body. Hello? What more do you really need than that?
Yeah, Michael, what do you make of this defense claim that we got at the end there? There was a different type of concrete. I didn't see any experts on the stand.
I didn't either. I gave my
that.
expertise that cement is different than concrete. Concrete has rocks in it, cement does not. But I didn't testify, and I didn't see anybody else talk about that.
Well, if I need a concrete expert, then I
know.
know to call attorney Michael Bryant. You can hear it right here on the debrief. Quickly, Eclyenne Mercy. We're just about out of time. So, Eclyenne, I would have thrown another question your way, but we need to wrap up. It's a holiday weekend. Eclyenne, appreciate your insight here on the debrief. Appreciate it as well. Katherine Smith, Michael Bryant. Our live coverage of trials will begin next week on Tuesday here on the Law&Crime Network. We will all be enjoying a long weekend. We're going to have a lot to talk about next week, though, with the Skylar Richardson case out of Ohio and other cases beginning. We have 3 cases on tap. We'll see you after the holiday. Have a good one.